Stephen Marshall, a successful millionaire who seemingly had everything, felt a deep emptiness that his wealth couldn't fill. One fateful Sunday morning, while out on his usual run, a chance encounter with a little girl named Lily began a journey that would change his life forever. Recognizing Stephen from a photo in her father's wallet, Lily led him to a modest home where he was reunited with his estranged brother, Andrew. The reunion sparked a heartfelt reconnection, leading Stephen to rediscover the value of family, love, and true wealth. Through reconciliation, shared moments, and a renewed sense of purpose, Stephen transformed his life from one of solitude to one filled with hope, connection, and joy. This is a story of redemption, family, and the discovery that the most valuable riches are found in the hearts of those we love. If you are not subscribed, I recommend you subscribe and activate the bell so you don't miss any videos. Before we dive into this story, please let me know in the comments where you're watching from. The young girl, with a voice full of innocent certainty, declared, "I recognize you. Your picture is in my daddy's wallet," leaving the millionaire frozen in place, stunned by the unexpected revelation. Stephen Marshall, a man whose life seemed perfect from the outside, awoke as the first light of dawn filtered through the luxurious silk curtains that adorned his bedroom. As he did every Sunday, he prepared himself for his ritualistic morning run through the serene, tree-lined avenues of the prestigious Greenwoods neighborhood, a place reserved for those with immense wealth and status. At 45, Stephen was the very embodiment of success, the proud owner of one of the nation's most influential tech empires, with a fortune that easily soared into the millions. Yet, as he methodically laced up his cutting-edge running shoes, a profound emptiness gnawed at his soul, an ache that all his wealth and accomplishments couldn't soothe. His grand mansion, sprawling with its 20 rooms and a magnificent Olympic-sized pool, felt more like a gilded cage than a home. The silence within its walls echoed the loneliness that had become his constant companion, a stark contrast to the vibrant life he had once imagined for himself. Stepping outside, Stephen began his run, allowing the steady rhythm of his footsteps to drown out the relentless flood of thoughts that tormented him. The streets were eerily quiet at this early hour, the only signs of life coming from a few gardeners meticulously tending the flawless gardens of the neighboring estates. He ran aimlessly, letting his feet guide him through both familiar paths and unknown streets, as his mind drifted between haunting memories and unsettling worries. How had he ended up here? He had amassed everything that money could buy, yet the hollow void inside him grew deeper with each passing day, leaving him more isolated than ever. So lost was he in his thoughts that the soft voice of a child nearly escaped his notice. "I know you, your picture is in my dad's wallet," the voice repeated, jolting Stephen out of his reverie. He came to an abrupt halt, his heart pounding not just from the exertion but from the shock and intrigue those words stirred within him. He glanced around, searching for the source, and there she was, a little girl, perhaps 7 years old, with hair the color of chestnuts neatly braided into 2 plaits and large, inquisitive eyes that studied him with a mixture of curiosity and recognition. Her attire was modest, a clear indication that her family was far removed from the opulence that surrounded them. Perplexed and intrigued, Stephen knelt to her level, offering her a warm, gentle smile. "What's your name, sweetheart?" he asked, his voice kind yet laced with an undeniable curiosity. "Lily," she answered, her face lighting up with a smile that mirrored his. "My dad has your picture in his wallet. He showed it to me." A sudden chill swept through Stephen, a cold sensation that settled deep in his bones. Who was this girl's father, and why would he carry a photograph of him? Stephen's mind raced, desperately seeking a logical explanation for this peculiar encounter. "What does your dad look like, Lily? Where is he now?" Stephen inquired, struggling to keep his growing curiosity from spilling over into his voice. "He's at home. We can go there now if you want," Lily offered innocently, as if it were the most natural thing in the world to lead a stranger to her father. She reached out and took Stephen's hand with a childlike trust that momentarily disarmed him. He hesitated, his mind racing through 1,000 thoughts. It was early on a Sunday morning. Surely her father would be resting. And what if this was some sort of misunderstanding or worse? Yet, despite his reservations, the curiosity that gnawed at him was too strong to ignore. With a nod, he allowed Lily to guide him through the streets. As they walked, Stephen observed how the landscape around them subtly transformed. The grand mansions with their pristine lawns and gated driveways gradually gave way to simpler, more modest homes, and eventually to a cluster of humble apartment buildings. Lily walked with purpose, occasionally greeting neighbors with the confidence of someone well-known in the area. Finally, they stopped in front of a modest, well-kept house. The door, though worn with age, stood sturdy. Lily knocked firmly, the sound echoing in the quiet morning air. Stephen held his breath, anticipation tightening his chest as he waited for what would come next. The door creaked open, revealing a man who appeared worn by life. A thin figure with a tired expression, his face shadowed by an unshaven beard. The moment Stephen laid eyes on him, it felt as though the world had stopped. He recognized those eyes, that jawline, the familiar slump of the shoulders. It was as if the air had been sucked out of the room, leaving him breathless with shock and a flood of emotions. "Is it you?" Stephen asked, his voice barely more than a whisper, a mixture of disbelief, emotion, and a deep, lingering guilt coloring his words. The man's eyes welled with tears, and he took a small, hesitant step forward. "Yes, it's me," he responded, his voice cracking under the weight of unspoken years. "It's me, Andrew." Lily, sensing the tension between the two men but not fully understanding it, innocently interjected, "Dad, you know him, right? He's the man in the photo." "Yes, Lily," Andrew replied, his voice thick with emotion as he struggled to maintain composure. "He's my brother." Lily glanced between them, her young mind unable to grasp the complexity of the moment. Sensing the need for privacy, Andrew gently suggested, "Lily, why don't you go play while I talk with your uncle?" He managed to keep his voice calm, though his heart was anything but. With a nod, Lily skipped off, leaving the two brothers alone to face the storm of memories, regrets, and hopes that had suddenly surged between them. Lily nodded and dashed inside the house, leaving the two brothers standing in the doorway, the silence between them thick and palpable. It had been nearly a decade since they had last seen each other, and the years had driven a deep wedge between them, creating a chasm filled with unspoken words and unresolved emotions. "Please come in," Andrew finally said, his voice quiet as he opened the door wider, inviting Stephen into his home. Stephen stepped into the modest house, a rush of memories and emotions threatening to engulf him. The sudden and unexpected reunion with his brother marked the beginning of a journey neither of them had anticipated. A path filled with the potential for reconciliation, but also fraught with challenges and the need for redemption. The living room was small but warm, with furniture that showed signs of wear but was kept impeccably clean. As Stephen glanced around, his eyes fell upon the family photos lining the walls. One picture, in particular, caught his attention. A photograph of Andrew cradling a newborn Lily. A sharp pang of guilt stabbed at Stephen's heart. He had missed so many pivotal moments in his brother's life, moments that he could never reclaim. "Have a seat," Andrew offered, gesturing to a well-worn but comfortable sofa. "Can I get you something to drink? I have coffee." "Coffee sounds great, thanks," Stephen replied, lowering himself onto the sofa, though he couldn't shake the feeling of unease that gripped him. As Andrew disappeared into the kitchen, Stephen couldn't help but observe how much his brother had changed. Gone was the carefree, vibrant young man he remembered. In his place stood a man who seemed burdened by life, with a tiredness in his eyes that spoke of struggles Stephen knew nothing about. When Andrew returned, he carried 2 steaming cups of coffee, setting one in front of Stephen before taking a seat across from him. For a moment, neither of them spoke, the air thick with the weight of everything that had been left unsaid for so many years. "So, you have a daughter," Stephen finally said, breaking the awkward silence that hung between them. Andrew nodded, a small, weary smile touching his lips. "Yes, Lily. She's 7 now. She's the best thing that's ever happened to me." "She looks like you," Stephen observed, noting the familiar features. "She has your eyes. And her mother's spirit," Andrew added, though his smile faded slightly as he spoke. "Her mother," Stephen prompted gently, sensing there was more to the story, though he wasn't sure he wanted to hear it. "She passed away 3 years ago," Andrew said quietly, his voice laced with sorrow. "In a car accident." If you're still tuned into this video and find the story inspiring, drop a 1 in the comments to let me know you're still with me. Stephen felt as if the ground had been pulled from under him. The revelation hit him like a punch to the gut. His brother had endured such immense loss, and he hadn't been there. "Andrew, I'm so sorry. I had no idea. How could you have known?" Andrew replied, a slight edge of bitterness creeping into his tone. "We haven't spoken in years." The silence that followed was heavy, filled with the weight of their shared history, the years of distance, and the wounds that had yet to heal. How have you been?" Stephen asked, fully aware of how hollow the question sounded, given everything Andrew had been through. Andrew let out a short, mirthless laugh. "I've had better days, but Lily and I manage. We get by." Stephen nodded, unsure of what to say, feeling out of place in this small but dignified home. The contrast between his opulent mansion, filled with luxury but devoid of warmth, and Andrew's simple, love-filled house was striking. "And you?" Andrew asked, his tone more neutral now. "You've done well for yourself. I hear you're quite the business magnate." Stephen shifted uneasily in his seat. "Yes, the company has been successful." "I'm happy for you," Andrew said, and to Stephen's surprise, his voice was sincere. "Andrew, Stephen began, but his thoughts were a jumbled mess. He wasn't sure what he wanted to say, whether to apologize for the years of silence, to offer his help, or simply to explain. But before he could find the right words, Lily came bounding back into the room, a bright smile on her face as she held up a colorful drawing. "Dad, look what I made!" she exclaimed, showing them the picture of 3 figures. A man, a girl, and a taller man. "It's beautiful, sweetheart," Andrew said, pulling her into a hug. "Who are they?" "It's us," Lily explained proudly. "You, me, and Uncle Stephen." The brothers exchanged a look, both surprised at how naturally Lily had accepted her uncle into her life. "Lily, darling," Andrew began softly, "Uncle Stephen probably has to leave soon. He has a very busy life." Stephen felt a pang of regret as he realized how much he had missed and how much he longed to stay. Stephen felt as though a cascade of icy water had suddenly washed over him. It was true. His life was a whirlwind of meetings, calls, and decisions that demanded his constant attention. Yet, in that fleeting moment, none of it seemed to matter as much as the opportunity before him. The realization struck him with surprising clarity. Actually, Stephen found himself saying, the words tumbling out before he could second-guess them. "How about we go grab some breakfast together? There's a little place nearby that makes the best pancakes." Lily's eyes lit up with excitement, and she eagerly turned to her father. "Can we, Dad? Please?" Andrew looked at his brother, surprise mingling with caution in his gaze. "I don't know, Stephen. We don't want to impose." "It's no imposition, I promise," Stephen replied earnestly. "I'd like to spend some time with my niece and catch up with you." For a tense moment, Andrew hesitated, clearly weighing the offer. Finally, he nodded slowly, the tension in his posture easing slightly. "All right, give us a few minutes to get ready." As Andrew and Lily went to change, Stephen remained in the living room, his eyes drifting to the photographs that adorned the walls. Each picture told a story: Andrew's graduation, his wedding day, and Lily's first steps. They were snapshots of a life Stephen had missed, a life he had once been a part of, but had lost touch with over the years. As he gazed at the images, a deep resolve began to take root within him. He couldn't rewrite the past, but maybe, just maybe, he could still be a part of the future. When Andrew and Lily returned, ready to go, Stephen greeted them with a genuine smile. As they walked out of the house, with Lily chattering excitedly between them, Stephen felt something stir within him that he hadn't felt in years. Hope. This breakfast felt like the first step on a long road to reconciliation. A road that would require them to confront their past, mend old wounds, and perhaps build something new together. The restaurant Stephen chose was a quaint, family-owned diner with wooden tables and the inviting aroma of freshly brewed coffee filling the air. Lily's wide-eyed wonder was palpable as she took in the cozy atmosphere, while Andrew seemed slightly out of place as if he wasn't used to such simple pleasures. They settled at a table by the window, where plates of steaming pancakes soon arrived. An awkward silence descended over the table, broken only by Lily's enthusiastic comments about the food. "So, Lily," Stephen began, trying to ease the tension, "what do you enjoy doing in your free time?" Lily's face lit up. "I love drawing and playing soccer. Dad taught me." Stephen turned to his brother, surprised. "You still play soccer?" Andrew shrugged modestly. "Once in a while. It's something Lily and I do together on weekends." A nostalgic smile spread across Stephen's face. "I remember when we used to play together in the backyard. You were always better than me." Andrew chuckled, the first genuine laughter they had shared in a long time. "I still am," he quipped, and for a brief moment, the years of distance seemed to melt away. But the fragile peace was shattered when Lily, her innocent curiosity piqued, asked, "Dad, why didn't you ever tell me about Uncle Stephen before?" The question hit the table like a stone, and both brothers visibly tensed. Stephen lowered his gaze, feeling the weight of his absence. Andrew, after a pause, carefully responded, "It's complicated, honey. Sometimes adults make mistakes and drift apart. But now," Stephen interjected, looking at his brother with a mix of guilt and hope, "now we're here, and I'd like, if your dad agrees, for us to get to know each other better." Andrew met Stephen's gaze for a long moment, his expression unreadable, before he slowly nodded. "I suppose we could try." The rest of the breakfast passed in a more relaxed atmosphere. Lily chattered away about school and her friends, her energy and joy infectious. Stephen listened intently, marveling at how much he had missed and how much he wanted to be a part of her life. When the meal was over, Stephen insisted on paying the bill, despite Andrew's polite protests. As they left the restaurant, an uncertain pause fell over them, each unsure of the next step. "How about we take a walk in the park?" Stephen suggested, breaking the silence. "There's a nice one nearby." Lily's face brightened instantly, and Andrew, seeing his daughter's excitement, agreed. They strolled through the park, Lily running ahead to explore while the brothers walked side by side, the silence between them heavy with the weight of unspoken words. "Andrew," Stephen began, his voice hesitant but determined, "I know it's been a long time, and I know things didn't end well between us, but I want you to know that I'm sorry. I'm sorry I wasn't there for you, especially after what happened to your wife." Andrew kept his eyes fixed on the path, his expression unreadable. After a long pause, he finally spoke. "It wasn't just your fault, Stephen. I made my share of mistakes too. My gambling addiction, it destroyed a lot." "Even so," Stephen replied, his voice thick with emotion, "I should have been there for you. You're my brother." Andrew nodded slightly, but the silence that followed was more thoughtful than tense. It was clear that the path ahead wouldn't be easy, but for the first time in years, they were walking it together. They stopped at a weathered park bench, the sound of children laughing and playing filling the air. Stephen watched Lily as she joined a group of kids on the swings, her joy contagious. He turned to Andrew, his voice gentle yet filled with curiosity. "How did you overcome it? The addiction, I mean." Andrew let out a deep sigh, the weight of his past evident in his expression. "It wasn't easy. I hit rock bottom more times than I care to remember. But when Maria got pregnant, I knew something had to change. I couldn't keep going down that path, not with a baby on the way. I joined a support group and got the help I desperately needed. And when Lily was born, I knew there was no turning back. I had to be better for her, for all of us." Stephen nodded, his heart swelling with a mix of admiration and regret. "You did it all on your own. I should have been there, Andrew. I should have supported you." Andrew looked down, shaking his head slightly. "I wasn't completely alone," he admitted. Maria's parents were there for me, especially after the accident. Without their help, I don't know what would have become of Lily and me. I'm glad you had them, Stephen said sincerely, his voice thick with emotion. He hesitated for a moment before continuing. Andrew, I know it's asking a lot, but do you think we could try to rebuild what we lost? I want to be part of your life again, part of Lily's life if you'll let me. Andrew remained silent, his gaze fixed on Lily as she swung higher and higher, her laughter ringing out. After what felt like an eternity, he finally spoke, his voice measured. It won't be easy, Stephen. A lot has happened, and we're not the same people we were. We've both changed. I know, Stephen replied, his voice filled with determination. But I'm willing to do whatever it takes. I don't want to lose any more time. Andrew turned to look at his brother, searching his face for sincerity. Why now? He asked, his tone curious. What's changed? Stephen paused, reflecting on the question. When he answered, his voice was quiet but honest. I'm not entirely sure. Maybe it was seeing Lily, realizing all the moments I've missed. Or maybe it's that I've finally understood that all the success, all the money, it means nothing if you're alone. Andrew nodded slowly as if the answer resonated deeply with him. I can't promise anything, he said at last, his voice cautious. But we can try. For Lily's sake, if nothing else. A lump formed in Stephen's throat, a mixture of gratitude and hope swelling within him. Thank you, Andrew. I won't let you down this time. At that moment, Lily came bounding towards them, her cheeks flushed with excitement. Dad, Uncle Stephen, did you see how high I was swinging? We saw, sweetheart, Andrew said, pulling her into a warm hug. You were flying, added Stephen with a smile. Lily turned her bright eyes on her uncle, a question dancing on her lips. Will you come visit us again? Stephen glanced at Andrew, silently seeking his approval. When his brother gave a small nod, Stephen responded, I'd love to, Lily. If your dad agrees, I'd like to see you both again very soon. Yes, Lily exclaimed, jumping up and down with excitement. Can we go to your house next time, Uncle Stephen? Do you have a pool? I've always wanted to swim in a pool. Stephen chuckled softly, the sound of her excitement warming his heart. Yes, I have a pool, and I'd love for you to come over and use it. If you're still tuned into this video and find the story inspiring, drop a 2 in the comments to let me know you're still with me. As they walked back to Andrew's house, the conversation light and filled with Lily's joyful chatter, Stephen felt a profound change within himself. The hollow emptiness that had plagued him for so long was beginning to be replaced by the warmth of family, a family he had forgotten he still had. When they reached the house, Stephen bent down to hug Lily, and then, after a brief hesitation, embraced Andrew as well. The hug was a little awkward, but it was filled with unspoken promises and the tentative first steps toward healing. I'll call you this week, Stephen said as they parted. Maybe we can plan that visit to the pool. Andrew nodded, a small smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. We'd like that. As Stephen walked away, he found himself turning back to wave at Lily, who waved enthusiastically in return. With each step, he felt as though he was leaving behind the lonely, empty man he had been just that morning. The road ahead, toward reconciliation and redemption, would likely be long and difficult, but for the first time in years, Stephen Marshall felt hope stirring within him. Back at his mansion, Stephen wandered through the grand, empty rooms with a newfound perspective. The opulent surroundings, once symbols of his success, now seemed cold and hollow. Instead of reminders of achievement, he saw spaces that could be filled with laughter, warmth, and family memories. He made his way to his study and pulled out an old photo album from the back of a drawer. As he flipped through the pages, the images of his childhood with Andrew transported him back to simpler times. Summers spent playing in their parents' garden, silly arguments that always ended in laughter, and the promises they had made to always be there for each other. When had they lost that? When had the pursuit of money and success overshadowed the importance of family? Stephen closed the album with a sense of determination. He couldn't change the past, but he could certainly fight for a better future. a future that included his brother and his niece. He reached for his phone, his hand hovering over it for a moment before he dialed a number he hadn't called in years. When the other line picked up, he spoke softly. "Mom, it's me, Steven. Yes, I'm fine. Listen, I have something to tell you." The days that followed were a blur of emotions and preparations for Steven. The conversation with his mother had been long and filled with tears, as they revisited old wounds and shared hopes for a better future. It was a conversation that had left Steven feeling both raw and renewed. Determined to make the upcoming visit with Andrew and Lily special, he threw himself into getting his mansion ready. He hired a cleaning crew to ensure every corner of the house sparkled and stocked the fridge with snacks and drinks that he thought would delight Lily. By Friday afternoon, Steven found himself standing at the entrance of his mansion, his heart pounding with a mixture of excitement and anxiety. As the taxi finally pulled up, his breath caught in his throat. Lily was the first to hop out, her eyes growing wide with wonder as she took in the sheer size of the house. "Wow," she breathed in awe. "It's like a castle." Andrew stepped out next, looking slightly out of place in his jeans and casual shirt. But it was clear he had made an effort, having shaved and tidied up for the occasion. Steven noticed this and felt a pang of warmth. His brother was trying just like he was. "Welcome," Steven said, his voice betraying just a hint of the nervousness he was feeling. "I'm really glad you could come. Thanks for inviting us," Andrew replied, his tone polite but tinged with a bit of discomfort, as though he wasn't quite sure how to fit into this world. Lily, however, was blissfully unaware of any tension between the adults. "Uncle Steven, where's the pool? Can we go swimming now?" she asked, her excitement bubbling over. Steven couldn't help but laugh, feeling some of his nerves melt away. "Of course, Lily. But how about a quick tour of the house first?" As they wandered through the sprawling rooms, Steven noticed Andrew's expression. A mix of awe and something else, perhaps a touch of melancholy. Meanwhile, Lily was entranced by everything, her enthusiasm especially piqued by the home theater and the vast kitchen. "I've never seen a house this big," Andrew remarked quietly when they reached Steven's study. "Sometimes it feels too big," Steven admitted, a hint of vulnerability in his voice, "especially when you're alone." There was a brief, awkward pause, but Lily quickly rescued the moment with her boundless energy. "The pool, Uncle Steven. Can we go now?" she asked eagerly. "Absolutely," Steven said with a smile. "Let's get you changed, and I'll show you where the changing rooms are." While Lily and Andrew changed into their swimsuits, Steven took a moment to make a quick phone call to his assistant, canceling a meeting he had scheduled for that afternoon. For the first time in what felt like forever, work could wait. The present moment was too precious to be interrupted. When Steven emerged at the pool area, the sight that greeted him filled his heart with an unexpected warmth. Lily was already in the water, her laughter echoing around the pool, while Andrew watched her from the edge, a genuine smile softening his features. It was a scene of pure joy, one that Steven had long forgotten was possible. "Come on, Uncle Steven," Lily called out, her voice full of playful command. "The water's perfect." Without hesitation, Steven shed his shirt and dove into the pool, joining his niece in her splashing games. Before long, even Andrew gave in and jumped in, and for a while, the years of distance and separation seemed to vanish in the ripples of the water. They played and swam until the sky began to glow with the soft, golden, and pink hues of the setting sun. As they finally climbed out of the pool, exhausted but content, Steven handed them fluffy towels, his heart swelling with a deep, unfamiliar contentment. "Are you hungry?" Steven asked, wrapping a towel around his shoulders. "I was thinking we could have a barbecue in the yard." "Yes, please," Lily exclaimed, her eyes lighting up at the prospect. "Can I help?" "Of course," Steven replied, his smile broadening. "I need all the help I can get. I'm not exactly a master chef." As they prepared the meal together, the atmosphere felt easy and natural. Lily chattered on about school and her friends. Andrew chimed in with occasional comments, and Steven found himself genuinely enjoying the simple act of cooking and being with his family. By the time they were sitting around the patio table under the night sky, the scent of freshly grilled food in the air. Stephen felt a profound sense of belonging, a feeling he hadn't experienced in a long time. "This is nice," Andrew said quietly as Lily focused on devouring her burger, oblivious to the emotion in her father's voice. "Thank you, Stephen." Stephen shook his head, his voice soft but filled with sincerity. "There's nothing to thank, Andrew. I've missed this. I've missed having family around." Andrew nodded, a shadow of sadness crossing his face. "Me too." For a moment, silence settled over them, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was the kind of silence that allowed space for reflection, for thoughts that didn't need to be spoken out loud. The night was filled with the sounds of distant crickets, the gentle rustling of leaves, and the occasional burst of laughter from Lily. As they sat there together, under the blanket of stars, it felt to Stephen like they were laying the first stones of a new foundation. A foundation built on shared moments, mutual understanding, and a quiet determination to rebuild what had once been lost. "Andrew," Stephen began, summoning his courage, "I know it's early, and there's still a lot we need to rebuild, but I want to be a real part of your lives. Not just for the occasional visit, but to truly be there for you and Lily." Andrew studied his brother for a long moment as if weighing the sincerity behind those words. "Are you sure, Stephen? Your life is so different from ours. I don't want you to feel like you have to do this out of obligation." "I don't feel obligated," Stephen interrupted gently. "For the first time in a long time, I feel whole." Lily, who had been listening intently, couldn't contain her excitement any longer. "Does that mean we'll come more often, Dad? Can I use the pool again?" Andrew looked at his daughter, then back at Stephen, a small smile slowly forming on his lips. "I suppose so, honey, if your uncle agrees." "More than agree," Stephen said, his voice thick with emotion. "I was thinking, maybe you could stay the weekend. There's plenty of room, and we could make some plans together." Lily's face lit up with joy, and Andrew, after a brief hesitation, nodded. "All right, we'll stay." That night, as Stephen prepared to go to bed, he heard the sound of laughter coming from the room where Andrew and Lily were staying. The joyous noise echoed through the once quiet halls of the mansion, bringing a warmth that had been absent for far too long. For the first time in years, Stephen didn't feel the emptiness that had plagued him. The mansion, which had once stood as a mere symbol of his success, was beginning to transform into something far more meaningful. A home, filled with the love and warmth of family. Lying in bed, Stephen made a silent vow. He would do everything in his power to keep this newfound connection alive, to be the brother and uncle that Andrew and Lily deserved. The road to full reconciliation would be long, but he was ready to take it one step at a time. With the distant sound of his family's laughter lulling him to sleep, Stephen smiled, dreaming of a future brimming with possibilities. The weekend passed in a blur of joy and activities. Stephen, Andrew, and Lily visited the local zoo, watched movies in the home theater, and even played a spontaneous game of soccer in the mansion's sprawling yard. To Stephen's surprise, he found that these simple, unpretentious moments brought him more happiness than any luxurious party or high-profile business event ever could. By Sunday afternoon, as he helped Andrew and Lily pack their things, Stephen couldn't shake the pang of sadness that gripped him at the thought of the house returning to its empty state. "This has been a wonderful weekend," he said, trying to keep his tone light. "I hope we can do it again soon." Andrew nodded, a faint smile touching his lips. "It's been surprisingly enjoyable." "Thank you, Stephen." Lily, busy packing her drawings, looked up with hopeful eyes. "Can we come back next weekend, Uncle Stephen?" Stephen chuckled softly. "I'd love that, Lily, but I think that depends on your dad." Both of them turned to Andrew, who seemed to mull over the idea for a moment before replying. "Well, we can't come every weekend, but maybe once a month." Stephen's face brightened at the suggestion. "That would be perfect. And maybe, could I visit you too? I'd like to see where you live, to be part of your everyday life." Andrew seemed taken aback by the request, but after a brief pause, he nodded slowly. "Sure, that would be nice." As they stood by the door saying their goodbyes, Stephen bent down to hug Lily. "Thank you for coming, little one. You've brought so much joy to this house." Lily hugged him tightly in return. "Thank you, Uncle Stephen. I had so much fun." Then Stephen turned to his brother. There was a moment of hesitation, but when they embraced, it was warmer and less awkward than before, a sign that the walls between them were slowly coming down. "Take care, Andrew," Stephen said softly. "And please call me if you need anything. Anything at all." Andrew nodded, the emotion clear in his eyes. "I will. Thank you, brother." As the taxi pulled away, taking Andrew and Lily back to their home, Stephen stood there, feeling a mix of sadness and hope. Yes, the house would be empty again, but it was also full of new possibilities. Possibilities he hadn't dared to dream of before. In the weeks that followed, Stephen found himself reorganizing his life in ways he had never considered. He began delegating more responsibilities at work, ensuring his weekends were free to spend with family. He even started leaving the office at more reasonable hours during the week, a change that surprised his employees and even himself. For the first time in years, Stephen was no longer defined solely by his work. He was reclaiming a part of himself that had been lost for far too long. On Wednesday afternoon, Stephen found himself driving to Andrew's neighborhood, his mind a swirl of nerves and anticipation. He had called ahead to ensure it was a good time to visit, and now, as he parked his car in front of the modest home, he felt a strange mix of excitement and apprehension. This visit was different. He wasn't just dropping by. He was stepping into a new chapter of their relationship. Before he could even knock, the door swung open, and Lily came bounding out, her face alight with joy. "Uncle Stephen, you came!" she exclaimed, her arms wide open. Stephen scooped her up, laughing as he spun her around. "Of course I came. I promised, didn't I?" Andrew appeared in the doorway, his smile tired but genuine. "Hello, Stephen. Welcome." If you're still tuned into this video and find the story inspiring, drop a 3 in the comments to let me know you're still with me. As they entered the house, Stephen couldn't help but take everything in with fresh eyes. The living room, though small, radiated warmth, with family photos and Lily's colorful drawings adorning the walls. The modest kitchen, too, felt inviting, with the comforting aroma of a homemade meal wafting through the air. "I hope you like stew," Andrew said somewhat sheepishly. "It's nothing fancy, but it smells amazing," Stephen interrupted, his tone sincere. "Better than anything I'd find at a restaurant." During dinner, Stephen found himself fully immersed in the simple, yet profound, pleasures of family life. He listened as Lily animatedly recounted her day at school, while Andrew added his commentary about work. It dawned on Stephen that, despite their financial limitations, this small home was filled with something his grand mansion had always lacked: love, warmth, and genuine connection. After dinner, while Lily was occupied with her homework, Stephen and Andrew retreated to the small backyard, each holding a cup of coffee. The evening air was cool, and the stars began to twinkle overhead, casting a serene glow on their conversation. "Andrew," Stephen began, his voice tentative but determined, "I've been thinking, I want to help. Financially, I mean." Andrew stiffened slightly, his grip tightening around his coffee cup. "Stephen, it's not necessary. We're managing just fine." "I know," Stephen responded quickly, sensing his brother's discomfort. "I don't want to make you feel uncomfortable or obligated. It's just that I have more money than I could ever need, and I'd like to use it for something meaningful. Maybe for Lily's education, or to help you move to a bigger place, if that's what you want." There was a heavy silence as Andrew stared into his cup, clearly grappling with the offer. "I appreciate it, Stephen. I do. But I don't want our relationship to be about money. I've been down that road before, and it nearly destroyed me." Stephen nodded, understanding the gravity of his brother's words. "I didn't mean to imply that. I just want to be part of your lives, in any way that I can." Andrew finally looked up, his gaze meeting Stephen's. "And you are, Stephen. We don't need your money. What we need is your presence, your time. That's worth more than any financial help you could offer." Stephen felt a lump rise in his throat, overwhelmed by the simplicity and sincerity of Andrew's words. "Thank you, Andrew. That means more to me than you know." They sat in companionable silence for a moment, the distant sound of Lily's humming filling the air as she worked on her homework. "You know," Andrew said after a while, breaking the silence, "there is something you could help with if you're serious." "Anything," Stephen replied without hesitation. "The community center in our neighborhood is struggling. They could use some volunteers, and maybe even a few donations to keep their after-school programs running. I thought maybe with your connections." Stephen's face lit up with excitement. "I'd love to help with that. Why don't we go together tomorrow? We can see what they need and figure out how I can get involved." Andrew nodded, a smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "That sounds like a great idea." As the evening came to a close and Stephen prepared to leave, he felt a profound sense of change. Not just in his relationship with Andrew and Lily, but in himself. For the first time in years, he felt a sense of purpose beyond the accumulation of wealth and success. "I'll be back tomorrow," Stephen promised as he hugged Lily and then Andrew. "We've got a community center to save." Driving back to his mansion, Stephen realized that the sprawling estate, with all its luxury, no longer felt like home. The home was where his family was, in that modest house, full of love, laughter, and the promise of new beginnings. The future, which once seemed lonely and aimless, now felt ripe with possibilities. Stephen smiled to himself, eager for what tomorrow would bring. The next morning dawned clear and bright, as if the universe itself was celebrating this new chapter in Stephen's life. He woke up early, more energized and excited than he had been in years. But this wasn't just another workday. This was a day that truly mattered. He arrived at Andrew's house just as Lily was getting ready for school. She ran to him, hugging his legs before bouncing off to catch the school bus. "Good morning," Andrew greeted, a steaming cup of coffee in his hand. "Ready to see the community center?" "More than ready," Stephen replied with enthusiasm. "I did some research last night. Seems like the center has been struggling for a long time." Andrew nodded as they walked toward Stephen's car. "Yeah, it's a shame. It used to be the heart of the neighborhood, but now they're barely able to keep the lights on." When they arrived at the community center, the sight that greeted them was a building that had seen better days. The peeling paint and dirty windows told a story of years of neglect, but Stephen could also see the potential hidden beneath the wear and tear. They were welcomed by Elena, the center's director, a middle-aged woman whose warm smile couldn't quite mask the exhaustion in her eyes. "Andrew, it's so good to see you," she said, clearly relieved to have them there. She turned to Stephen, her eyes full of curiosity. "And you must be Stephen?" "Yes," Stephen replied, extending his hand. "Andrew's brother. I'm here to help in any way I can." Elena's eyes lit up with a mix of hope and gratitude. "We could certainly use it," she admitted. "The center has been struggling for a long time, and we're running out of options." As Elena gave them a tour, Stephen listened intently, taking mental notes of everything that needed attention. The roof that needed repairing, the outdated electrical system, the worn-out equipment. But more than that, he saw the potential, the impact this center could have on the community if it were given the chance to thrive again. "What programs do you currently have?" Stephen asked as they walked through a room that once housed art classes. "We used to offer a lot art, after-school tutoring, even a book club for seniors," Elena explained, a hint of sadness in her voice. "But with budget cuts, we can barely keep the after-school program running." Stephen nodded thoughtfully, already formulating a plan in his mind. "What if we could not only restore those programs, but add more? Computer classes, a community gym. There's so much potential here." Elena and Andrew exchanged glances, their expressions a mix of hope and disbelief. "That would be incredible," Elena said, her voice thick with emotion. "But how?" Stephen smiled, feeling a surge of determination. "I have some contacts who could help with funding, and I'm more than willing to make a personal donation. But more than that, I want to get involved. Organize, recruit volunteers, whatever it takes." Andrew looked at his brother with a newfound respect. "Count me in too. I can help with the repairs, and I'm sure others in the neighborhood would pitch in as well. Elena seemed on the verge of tears. I don't know how to thank you both. This could change everything. Stephen extended his hand with a reassuring smile. Let's get started, then. As they began making plans, Stephen felt a deep sense of fulfillment, a feeling he hadn't experienced in a long time. This was more than just a project. It was a chance to truly make a difference, to be part of something that mattered. When Stephen returned to his mansion that evening, he no longer saw it as a cold space. Instead, he saw it as a place that could be filled with the warmth and love of family, and perhaps a community that needed support. He knew that this was just the beginning, but for the first time in years, he was eager to see what the future held. Andrew, it's so good to see you, Elena greeted warmly, before turning her curious gaze towards Stephen. And who might this be? This is my brother, Stephen, Andrew introduced with a note of pride. He's here to help with the center. Elena's face lit up with a mixture of relief and excitement. Really? That's amazing. We could use all the help we can get. Believe me. As Elena led them on a tour of the center, Stephen absorbed every detail. The building's roof was in desperate need of repair, the electrical system was outdated, and much of the equipment was either worn out or broken beyond use. What programs are you currently running? Stephen asked, trying to grasp the full scope of the situation. Elena sighed, the weight of the center's struggles evident in her voice. We used to offer so much: art classes, after-school tutoring, even a book club for the seniors. But with the budget cuts, we're barely keeping the after-school program afloat. Stephen nodded, already formulating ideas in his mind. What if we not only revived those programs, but also introduced new ones? Maybe computer classes, or even a small community gym? Elena and Andrew exchanged glances, their expressions a mix of cautious hope and disbelief. That would be incredible, Elena said, her voice trembling slightly. But how could we possibly make it happen? Stephen smiled, feeling a surge of determination. I have some contacts who might be interested in funding a corporate social responsibility project. I'm also willing to make a substantial personal donation. But beyond the money, I want to get personally involved, organizing, recruiting volunteers, whatever it takes. Andrew looked at his brother with newfound respect and pride. Count me in, too. I can help with the repairs, and I'm sure many people in the neighborhood would be eager to lend a hand. Elena looked as though she might cry, her emotions barely contained. I don't even know what to say. This could change everything. Then let's do it, Stephen said, extending his hand with a determined smile. Let's get started. What followed were weeks of relentless activity. Stephen tapped into his network, securing donations from local businesses, while Andrew took charge of organizing volunteer teams from the neighborhood. To Stephen's surprise, he found himself genuinely enjoying the hands-on work, painting walls, fixing furniture, and working side by side with residents who were just as eager to see the center revived. Lily became a regular at the center, her enthusiasm contagious as she helped organize books in the new library or assisted younger kids with their homework. Stephen watched her with pride, feeling more connected to his family and community than he ever had before. One Saturday, as Stephen and Andrew took a break from painting one of the classrooms, Andrew turned to his brother with a thoughtful smile. You know, I never thought I'd see you like this. Like what? Stephen asked, wiping a smudge of paint from his cheek. Happy, Andrew replied simply, the word heavy with meaning. Truly happy. Stephen paused, reflecting on his brother's words. You're right, he said after a moment. I haven't felt this way in years. This feels right. Andrew nodded, placing a hand on Stephen's shoulder. I'm proud of you, Stephen. You've changed so much. Stephen felt a lump form in his throat, the emotion catching him off guard. Thanks, Andrew. I couldn't have done it without you and Lily. You've both shown me what matters in life. The brothers sat in companionable silence for a moment, the sound of laughter and the hum of hard work filling the air around them. If you're still tuned into this video and find the story inspiring, drop a 4 in the comments to let me know you're still with me. Finally, after months of dedication and effort, The grand reopening of the community center arrived. The building, once a symbol of neglect, now stood proudly with fresh paint and sparkling windows. Colorful banners announced the new programs, and an excited crowd gathered to celebrate. Stephen, Andrew, and Lily stood proudly next to Elena, all wearing community center t-shirts. As Elena delivered an emotional speech, thanking everyone who had made the center's revival possible, Stephen looked around, his heart swelling with pride. Families were gathered together, seniors were chatting animatedly, and children were running around with unbridled enthusiasm. There was a palpable sense of hope and renewed energy in the neighborhood. When it was his turn to speak, Stephen approached the microphone with humility. "I'm not here as a benefactor or a savior," he began, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "I'm here as part of this community. This center is proof of what we can accomplish when we come together, when we care for one another. It has taught me more than I could ever teach anyone. It has shown me the true meaning of wealth, and it has nothing to do with the money in the bank." He glanced at Andrew and Lily, who beamed at him with pride. "My family brought me here, and you have all become my extended family. Thank you for allowing me to be part of something so special." The crowd erupted into applause, but more than that, Stephen felt the warmth of a community that had embraced him, just as he had embraced them. This was more than a project. It was a new beginning, for the center, for the neighborhood, and Stephen himself. Stephen chuckled, his heart swelling with affection as he looked into his granddaughter's eager eyes. "All right, my little one," he said, settling her comfortably on his lap. "But you must promise me you'll never get tired of it." "I promise," Lucy exclaimed, her excitement palpable. As Stephen began to recount the story, his voice was filled with warmth and nostalgia. "It all started on a quiet Sunday morning, much like today. I was out for a run, lost in my thoughts when a little girl, your Aunt Lily, called out to me. She told me she recognized me from a picture in her father's wallet. That moment changed everything for me, Lucy. It led me back to my brother, to your grandpa Andrew, and it brought our family back together." Lucy listened intently, her wide eyes reflecting the magic of the tale she had heard so many times before. For her, it was more than just a story. It was the beginning of the family she knew and loved. "And you know what?" Stephen continued, his voice softening. "That little girl, your Aunt Lily, showed me what matters in life: love, family, and making a difference in the world. Because of her, I found my purpose, and I found all of you." Lucy wrapped her small arms around her grandfather's neck, hugging him tightly. "I love you, Grandpa." Stephen held her close, feeling the depth of the love that now filled his life. "I love you too, Lucy, more than you'll ever know." As they sat together, the sun dipping below the horizon, Elena watched with a tender smile. "You know, Stephen," she said, her voice filled with emotion, "this story of ours, it's a beautiful one." Stephen looked over at her, his heart brimming with gratitude. "It truly is," he agreed, "and it's still being written, with every day that passes." At that moment, Lily and Michael joined them on the porch, their faces glowing with happiness. "Talking about old times again, Dad?" Lily teased, her eyes shining with the same warmth that had always drawn people to her. "You know me too well," Stephen replied with a grin. "I can't help it. It's a story worth telling." Michael smiled as he took a seat next to Lily. "It's more than just a story, Stephen. It's the foundation of everything we've built together." Andrew, who had been watching the scene unfold, joined them on the porch, sitting down with a contented sigh. "And look at what it's led to. A family stronger than ever, a community that's thriving, and a future full of promise." Stephen nodded, looking around at the faces of those he loved most in the world. "I never imagined, all those years ago, that this is where life would take me, but I'm so incredibly grateful that it did." As night fell, the family remained on the porch, sharing stories, laughter, and love. The years had brought their share of challenges and heartaches, but they had also brought immeasurable joy and fulfillment. The bonds that had been reforged on that fateful day had only grown stronger with time, weaving a tapestry of love and connection that would endure for generations. As the stars began to twinkle in the night sky, Stephen felt a profound sense of peace. His life, once defined by the pursuit of wealth and success, had transformed into something infinitely richer, filled with purpose, love, and the satisfaction of knowing he had made a difference in the lives of others. And so, as the night deepened and the family continued to share their memories and dreams, Stephen Marshall knew with absolute certainty that he had found his true wealth. It wasn't in the bank accounts or the titles he had once sought so fervently, but in the love of his family, the joy of giving back to his community, and the legacy of kindness and compassion that would live on long after he was gone. This was the life he had always been meant to live, and it was, in every way, the happiest of endings. Stephen glanced at Elena and Andrew, who returned his look with warm, knowing smiles. Taking a deep breath, he began to share the story that had forever altered the course of his life. The story of a little girl who had spotted him on the street and unknowingly led him back to his family. As the words flowed, Stephen marveled at the remarkable way life had come full circle. Here he was, narrating to his granddaughter a tale that began with another little girl just her age, a girl who had been the spark for all the joy and fulfillment that followed. And so, my dear Lucy, Stephen concluded, his voice filled with emotion, I discovered that true wealth isn't in the money we accumulate or the possessions we own, but in the people we love and the difference we make in the lives of others. Lucy wrapped her tiny arms around her grandfather, holding him tightly. I love you, Grandpa. When I grow up, I want to be just like you and Grandma Elena, helping people. Stephen's heart swelled with pride and deep emotion. And you will be my little one. You have a heart full of love, just like your mother. At that moment, Lily and Michael arrived, their faces glowing with warmth as they embraced everyone. Lily, now a middle-aged woman but still possessing the same radiant smile she had as a child, settled beside her uncle. Telling stories again, Uncle Stephen? She asked with a smile that spoke of shared memories and deep affection. Your daughter is relentless, Stephen laughed. She reminds me so much of someone I met many years ago. Lily took her uncle's hand, her eyes glistening with gratitude. I'll never stop thanking you for all you've done for us, and for this community. But Stephen shook his head, his voice soft but firm. No, Lily, I'm the one who should be thanking you. You and your father showed me what it means to live a truly rich life. As the family continued to talk and laugh, exchanging stories and memories, Stephen found himself reflecting on the incredible journey his life had taken. Once a lonely, self-absorbed man, he had grown into the patriarch of a loving family and a cornerstone of a thriving community. The community centers, which had begun as a personal quest for redemption, had multiplied throughout the city, impacting countless lives. The foundation, now expertly led by Lily with Michael's support, continued to evolve, adding programs like financial education, mobile health clinics, and green energy initiatives, constantly seeking new ways to uplift and empower those in need. Andrew, though officially retired, remained a vital presence at the centers, his wisdom and experience deeply valued. Over the years, the bond between him and Stephen had become unbreakable, their brotherhood only growing stronger with time. And then there was Elena, his steadfast partner, who had been his anchor through every storm and his source of joy in every triumph. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of gold and pink, Stephen looked around, overwhelmed with peace and gratitude. His life, once so empty and devoid of meaning, was now overflowing with love, purpose, and the profound satisfaction that comes from making a real difference in the world. Are you all right, love? Elena asked, noticing the distant, reflective look in Stephen's eyes. He turned to her, his eyes shimmering with tears of happiness. More than all right, my love. I feel at peace. I feel complete. Just then, as if the universe wanted to affirm his words, a gentle breeze swept through the garden, carrying with it the sweet scent of flowers and the joyous sound of children's laughter. Stephen closed his eyes, savoring the moment. He thought about the man he had been, the long and winding road he had traveled, and all the lives he had touched along the way. He thought about the innocent question from little Lily that had set all this in motion. and about Lucy, who was now carrying forward the legacy of love and service. And in that moment, Stephen knew with absolute certainty what true wealth was. It wasn't the millions in his bank account, nor the titles or power he had once pursued so fervently. True wealth was here, in the love of his family, in the gratitude of his community, and in the deep contentment of a life well lived. Stephen Marshall, who had once been a lonely millionaire, had discovered a treasure far more valuable than any material fortune. He had found love, purpose, and the unparalleled joy of giving, and in doing so, he had uncovered the true wealth of the soul. As the gentle embrace of nightfall settled over the neighborhood, the Marshall family lingered on the porch, basking in the comforting glow of shared memories, warm laughter, and the deep, unbreakable bond that had formed between them over the years. The stars began to twinkle softly in the vast sky above as if joining in their celebration of a life well lived. The air was filled with the subtle scent of blooming flowers, and the distant sound of crickets provided a soothing backdrop to their quiet, heartfelt conversations. Stephen sat among them, feeling the profound warmth of his family surrounding him, a warmth that seeped deep into his soul. It was a stark contrast to the cold, lonely nights he had once endured in his grand but empty mansion. Now, the echo of his family's laughter, the sparkle in their eyes, and the love that flowed freely between them filled the spaces that had once felt so hollow. He looked at each face: Elena, Andrew, Lily, Michael, and little Lucy, and his heart swelled with a mixture of pride, gratitude, and overwhelming love. He reflected on the remarkable journey that had brought him to this moment, a journey that had started with a little girl's innocent question on a quiet Sunday morning. That question had set off a chain of events that would forever change the course of his life, leading him away from the superficial pursuit of wealth and status and toward something far more meaningful. It had taken him years to understand that true wealth wasn't something that could be accumulated in a bank account or displayed in material possessions. It was found in the love of family, in the bonds of friendship, and in the difference one could make in the lives of others. As the night deepened, the conversation on the porch turned to stories of the past, of struggles and triumphs, of challenges overcome and dreams fulfilled. Stephen listened with a quiet smile, occasionally adding a comment or two, but mostly just soaking in the joy of being with his loved ones. He realized how far they had all come, individually and as a family. Andrew, who had once been lost in the grip of addiction, was now a pillar of strength and wisdom, his journey one of redemption and resilience. Lily, who had started as a bright, curious child, had grown into a compassionate leader, dedicated to continuing the work her family had begun. Even little Lucy, with her boundless energy and big heart, was already showing signs of the remarkable person she would one day become. Elena, ever by his side, had been his constant support through all the ups and downs. Her love had been his anchor, her encouragement his driving force. As he looked at her now, he could see the years reflected in her gentle smile and the twinkle in her eyes, but also the unwavering strength that had carried them both through the toughest of times. She had believed in him when he had doubted himself, had stood by him when he had faltered, and had shared in every joy and sorrow along the way. Stephen's thoughts drifted to the legacy he would leave behind. The community centers that had started as a personal quest for redemption had grown into a network of support and hope for countless individuals and families. The programs they had developed, ranging from educational opportunities to healthcare services, were making a tangible difference in the lives of so many, and they were a testament to what could be achieved when people came together for a common cause. The foundation, under Lily's capable leadership, was thriving, continuing to evolve and expand, always finding new ways to serve those in need. But more than the physical legacy of buildings and programs, Stephen realized that the true legacy he was leaving was one of love and compassion. It was the impact he had made on the people around him, the lives he had touched, the kindness he had shown. It was in the way his family had come together, not just in blood, but in spirit, creating a bond that was stronger than anything money could buy. It was in the values he had passed down to the next generation, values of generosity, empathy, and a commitment to making the world a better place. As the night wore on, the family slowly began to drift inside, one by one, with promises of more stories to be shared in the days to come. Stephen remained on the porch for a while longer, savoring the peaceful silence that had settled in. The neighborhood, once just a place where he lived, had become a true home, a place filled with memories, love, and a deep sense of belonging. Elena joined him, taking his hand in hers. "Are you all right, love?" she asked softly, noticing the contemplative look in his eyes. Stephen turned to her, his heart brimming with emotion. "More than all right," he replied, his voice thick with feeling. "For the first time in my life, I feel truly at peace. I feel complete." A gentle breeze stirred, carrying with it the sweet scent of the flowers they had planted together over the years. The wind whispered through the trees, as if nature itself was acknowledging the journey they had been on, the challenges they had faced, and the incredible transformation they had undergone. Stephen closed his eyes and took a deep breath, letting the moment wash over him. He thought about all that had led him here, the choices he had made, the people who had come into his life, and the lessons he had learned along the way. He thought about little Lily, who had unknowingly been the catalyst for this incredible journey, and about the little girl now asleep inside, who was carrying forward the legacy of love and service that had been born from that fateful day. And as he sat there, hand in hand with the woman he loved, he knew with absolute certainty that this was the true meaning of wealth. It wasn't about the money he had once chased so relentlessly. It wasn't about the titles or the accolades he had once thought so important. True wealth was here, in this moment, in the love of his family, in the gratitude of his community, and in the satisfaction of a life well lived. It was in the joy of giving, in the connections he had made, and in the knowledge that he had made a difference in the world. Stephen Marshall, who had once been a lonely millionaire, had found a treasure far more valuable than any material fortune. He had found love, purpose, and the unparalleled joy of giving, and in doing so, he had discovered the true wealth of the soul. And as the stars twinkled above and the sounds of the night enveloped him, Stephen knew that this was not just an ending, but a beginning. A new chapter was unfolding, one that would continue long after he was gone. The seeds of love and compassion they had sown would continue to bloom, touching lives and changing the world in ways he could only begin to imagine. His story, the story of a man who discovered the true meaning of wealth, would live on in the hearts of all those he had touched, a testament to the power of love, transformation, and the enduring impact of a life lived with purpose. And so, as the night gently embraced the neighborhood, the story of Stephen Marshall came to a close. But his legacy, the love he had shared, the lives he had changed, and the lessons he had learned, would continue to echo through the generations, a beacon of hope and inspiration for all who followed. As we wrap up this heartfelt journey of Stephen Marshall's transformation, we invite you to reflect on the powerful lessons shared in this story. What have you learned from Stephen's journey about the true meaning of wealth, love, and purpose? We encourage you to think about one key takeaway from this story that resonates with you and that you plan to bring into your own life. Please share it in the comments below. We'd love to hear your thoughts and insights. If this story touched your heart and inspired you, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Your support helps us continue to share meaningful stories that inspire and uplift. Thank you for being a part of this journey with us.